Good morning. Welcome back to Medical Coding with Bleu. All right. So this is part 2 of the interview tips for medical coders. I really appreciate everybody that has submitted questions or asked something that I can put in the video. So I really appreciate that. But I do have good news. So I took a poll yesterday about what video to post today because I didn't want, because today is Q-Day Tuesday normally, and I didn't want to like overdo it with the videos today, but the people have spoken, so I will submit to the will of the people. Good news, I will be filming Q&A Tuesday tonight, so that way you guys can have your Q&A Tuesday fix, as somebody described it to me. I will go ahead and film that tonight, so that will be posted about 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. So just so that way you guys can know that's about when the video will be up. So there's still time to submit questions if you'd like. I have a really good list of questions, and if not, we can just tack it on to another episode. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with the episode today. But I wanted to make one more little thing before I start. So yesterday I talked about all the tips for what to do when you're going to the interview and what questions the interviewer may ask you. One thing I forgot to mention, wear closed-toed shoes. Do not have your little tootsies out because it's just better that way, okay? You need to show that you are a whole and complete package when it comes to what outfit you're picking. Please make sure that you're wearing closed-toed shoes, okay? The other thing is, please don't wear perfume. They need to remember you and not the perfume that you're wearing, okay? So just something to consider, all right? Now, let's go ahead and get into the questions. So, these are the questions that the interviewer may say, well, do you have any questions as the interviewee? And this is when you can say, aha, yes, I do. Because a lot of times interviewers like when interviewees are engaged. You know, who wants to hire somebody that is just there and like answering questions, and then when it comes time to say, do you have any questions? No. Or, I don't think so. You know what I mean? No, you don't want to do that. You want to say, oh, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. It is okay to write these questions down on your notepad and take your notepad with you. That way you can have your questions. If you're nervous, you'll have all of them written down, so that can take a little bit of that anxiety away. But let's start in with the questions that you can ask your potential employer, which is, what is the work environment like? Are you in a big room all together with other coders, or are you embedded in the clinic if you're working in a hospital, right? Or if you're trying to work in a hospital. This is very important because if you're working in a big room with a bunch of coders, sometimes they have rules about talking. I've heard this complaint several times where people will say, I was in a big room with a bunch of people and we were not allowed to talk. This is good and bad at the same time, because if it is where it is so restricted on your communication and everything, like you can't talk and you get in trouble for talking, this can put a lot of stress on people. So knowing what your work environment is going to be like and asking them what it is before you start will give you a good idea of whether or not you want to work at that particular place, okay? Because if you're not wanting to work in that kind of environment where they say you're in a big room but there's no talking, and that's going to be very difficult for you, then maybe you should consider applying elsewhere and letting somebody else who would be okay with that environment have that job, okay? Just something to think about. If you're embedded in the clinics, you're going to have a lot more exposure to providers. This can be good and it can be nerve-wracking at the same time. So I prefer to be more hands-on. I prefer to be with my doctors. I have always preferred that. I was very excited when I was finding out that we were going to be embedded in the clinic. And now I wouldn't have it any other way. But that's just me. So again, something to ask. The next question is, what does a typical day look like? Is it all straight coding, or are there other activities to do, like running error reports, or is there education, things like that? How often are there education things? Because sometimes in some facilities you'll have where you have to keep up your continuing education with your particular facility. For me in my facility, I have a list of mandatory training that the hospital has implemented, and I have to do it, like safety, workplace harassment, sexual harassment. I have to stay on top of those classes that they have on in their system, so that way I can maintain my access. That's another question you can ask. How often do you have continuing education for the facility? Okay, not for your credential, because that's something different, but for the facility, what is the continuing education like? Is there something like that where you have to do HIPAA and things like that? So another good one. The next one is, will I have to provide any of my own equipment? Sometimes wherever you're working, you may have to have your own computer, okay? Or you may have to buy your own laminator or your own office supplies, okay? It all depends. So that's another good question to ask, because you have to have the tools when you're working. You have to have a stapler, you have to have pens and pencils and all that good stuff. So just something to keep in mind when you are applying, okay? The next one is, ask the interviewer, what do you enjoy most about working here as an employee? This will often take them off guard, but it will give them a chance to talk about themselves, which some people enjoy that the fact that people are asking about them, okay? It's not about their function, it is about them personally. How do they like working there? You're spending if you're working at a full-time place, right? You're spending a minimum of 40 hours a week there. Okay, let's not talk about the fact that you're there during lunch and you're there during, when you get there in the morning, and then maybe a little bit when you're trying to leave at the end of the day. So that 40 hours is not just 40 hours, it's more like 50 hours that you're there. And so that's something to keep in mind. You're going to be spending a lot of time at this place, okay? You need to make sure that you like it. So asking somebody that works there would be a good way to know, hey, what is going on at this place? What do you like most about working here? Okay. All right, next question. Are continuing education units or CEUs included with your employment? Some employers do offer that. Some will give you a stipend so that you can just take whatever classes that you want. I am fortunate that at my facility, they do offer those, and they're free to me. So they're free to all employees that are in the patient administration department. So that is something that you have to ask, because continuing education units get quite expensive if you have to pay out of pocket for them. And not only that, the more credentials you have, the more continuing education units you are going to have to shell out. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind, different facilities require different amounts of continuing education units. So you will have to consult the website that you are a member of, not the website, but the association that you're a member of, and find out how many continuing education units are needed for a particular credential, okay? All right, the next question is there opportunities for advancement? You can ask that. You can say, I'm going to start out as a coder, or if the job is for a coder position, where else can I go from here? Is there a natural progression, or is it just the same level, the same spot? Okay. Next question. What are the biggest challenges in this position that someone would face? Okay. Another good question, because this way they can tell you kind of what to expect. And if they don't know how to answer that right away, that might be just a good indicator that you are really interested in this position, and any information that you can get will be beneficial to you and help you to decide as well, because you are bringing something to the table, yourself, your knowledge, your experience. And even if you don't have experience so far as a medical coder, doesn't mean that you can't bring a good work ethic and a curiosity nature that you can, help people to be more better with communication, so that way things can start flowing in the clinic or flowing in the department, and more detailed documentation, better lines of communication. There's a lot of things you have to think about yourself, and the fact that you're bringing your talents to this place. They are just as lucky to have you as you are to get that job, okay? So think of it like that, and that's the energy that you need to put off. You are there, and you are going to do a great job, because you are going to try, and you are going to enjoy what you're doing. Hopefully you're going to enjoy what you're doing. Hopefully you got into medical coding for the right reasons, and you want to do it. So that's that one. The next one is, will you be answering to a lead or supervisor? Some facilities have both, and then some facilities only have a supervisor over the coders. Some facilities have a supervisor and then they have a lead, and then the lead is over a group of coders. I've been in places where there's both situations. So it all depends, but it's very important to know what the chain of command is, okay? This way, if you have an issue, you can always try to resolve it at the lowest possible level. That is the key. Any professional work environment that you are in, you need to try to solve any issues, any disputes, anything at the lowest level. And the only time that it needs to get elevated is if you and the other person cannot come to a agreement, okay? So that is very important. It's very important to know the chain. And that's it on that one. All right. The next one is, what is the work schedule like? Are there set hours? Will you be able to choose your time? When I first started this facility, they had us at a set time, and we had a 1 hour for lunch. And that wasn't really convenient for me because I felt like it just made the day so much longer. And then they said, well, you can pick from this time to this time to start. You can start anytime from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then you go your 8 hours during the day. And you can have an hour for lunch. You can have a half hour for lunch, okay? But that was only after we had been there for a certain amount of time. I think it was like 6 months. And then we could choose our own schedule. So I'm very happy with my schedule. I would not want to change my schedule for anything. Because it's just more convenient for me, especially with the volume of people that I particularly have always coming to me for questions, which I don't mind. But I work in the morning at 6 o'clock. That's the time I start my day. I start at 6 a.m. And it is very nice because I don't see too many people until about 7:30 when everybody else starts to come in. So it's that first hour and a half of the day that I'm able to set up and get everything going and have that peace and quiet for just that little bit of time, and then the rest of the day is taking care of business. So, but yes, that is a good question to ask. That way you can know if maybe you have a family situation where you have to drop off your kids. Are you going to be able to start earlier or later? And that is a good question to ask. All right, next one. Will you be working in one specific specialty, or will you be going to different clinics on a rotating basis? Are you allowed a ramp up period when starting a new clinic if you are a rover? So if they tell you, well, we're going to have you working 6 months in cardiology, and then another 6 months later, you'll be in orthopedics. Next 6 months, you'll be in podiatry. Next 6 months, you'll be in pediatrics. Ask them if you are able to have a ramp up period, because obviously production wise, once you get used to a clinic, it is going to be there's going to be a learning curve and a learning time when you go and you start in a new clinic. Okay, that may seem stressful to some people, and yes, it may seem stressful at first, once you start learning the basics of being a medical coder and knowing how to do research, knowing where to go if you have questions, okay? Not just always running to a lead or a supervisor or a coworker. Learning on your own how to look up things. Coming here, asking a question on Medical Coding with Bleu, my little plug. Knowing how to do those things so that you can work efficiently, and it won't be so nerve-wracking after a while, okay? The more you learn and the longer you're in it, the more you'll start to pick up on different specialties and different clinics and coding things, the little nuances about different clinics. So just something to think about. Don't be scared if they ask you to do different clinics or clinics that you've never done before. And if this is your first job, if they tell you that you're going to be a rover, don't be scared. Okay, it's all the learning process. It's stressful, yes, but you get exposure to so many things. This is going to go on your resume, okay? So that way you can have all of this to fall back on. It's not just going to be one type of clinic that you're used to and you don't know how to code anything else and you just don't want to learn anything else. This being a medical coder is all about learning, and it's going to be a continual learning process. Like I said, I've had my credential for over 10 years. I'm still learning. And in fact, I'm learning even more now than ever before. Uh, Part of the reason is you guys. You guys are helping me to have to learn even more because I have to sit here and make sure that when I'm doing like the quizzes or when I'm doing a particular episode about a specialty or something, I have to make sure that I have all of the information correct and lined up, and I have examples or I have resources that you guys can go to. These things take time, but it is a investment of time that is worth it to me, okay? It's worth it to me because it is beneficial to other people out there as well as beneficial to myself, because I know that not every facility has that supportive team. There are some facilities that don't have supportive teams because everybody just sort of does their own thing. And while that is difficult, like I said, my whole goal is to try to be a source of, okay, we're all in this together. Let's work together. Let's learn this. Let's do this the correct way, not just some way that we, willy-nilly think of, or some shortcut way, because it's very important to always be accurate as possible when it comes to coding, okay? And trying to understand it, because there is quite a bit to understand about medical coding, okay? Getting back to the questions. But yes, that is something that you should ask. The next one is there a pre-bill period, right? Meaning this is where all the records that you touch, right? They'll give you a set amount of records. And these are 100% audited, and you have to achieve a certain percentage of accuracy in order to stay employed. There are a lot of places that do this. There's a lot of companies that do this. They'll put you through a pre-bill period, okay? Where everything that you touch, they are going to look at 100% just to make sure that you are coding accurately, that you are picking up things appropriately, that they don't have to worry about you. And usually it's like 50 records, and then you have to achieve a certain percentage of correctness in that 50. Some facilities it's 100. It just depends. Like I said, that way you can show that you're coding correctly, because they can't just turn you loose and then you're coding incorrectly, right? Because it goes back to billing and patients having to put out more or less money because the coding is incorrect. So something to keep in mind. All right. Let's see. The next one is, how often are audits conducted after pre-bill, right? Meaning by the supervisor, lead, or data quality person. Is there a set number, or is it a percentage of the total encounters that you have completed? Say, for instance, in a month, if you completed, let's just say 2,000 records in a month, okay? And I'm just giving out numbers, okay? Don't get excited. If you did $2,000 records in a month, right? And say, for instance, out of that 2,000, they pull like 20 records, okay? And just to sort of pick and see if you're coding correctly. Is it that many, or is it, 50 records, or is it, what is it? That way they can let you know. And then the next part of that is, how is mediation handled? Meaning, if you present your evidence, like if the auditor says that you did something wrong and you present your evidence that you believe that your code is correct, if you can't come to an agreement, how is it escalated from there? Is it sent on to somebody else? Is it sent on to another auditor? What is the process for that? Okay, very important when you are getting a job and trying to find out, because those audits can affect whether or not you stay employed or not. Because if they're seeing that you're making a lot of errors and a lot of mistakes, but maybe you caught the auditor on an off day and maybe they counted you wrong for something that was actually correct, it is important to be able to know that you have a way to have a neutral party come in and look and see who is correct, okay? Just to make sure and double check that you are actually either correct or incorrect, right? But in the case of this, it would be that you are actually trying to be correct. That's very, very important, okay? There's something to think about. All right, and ask. The next one is the coder required to do provider training? You guys know how excited I get about this, but in not all facilities allow the coders to go in front of the providers. There's many reasons why. Me personally, I feel like if I'm the one who's coding your stuff, I'm the one who needs to be the one educating you. But that's just me. And there are some people that get very nervous. They don't want to do provider education. And to that, I say, try something different. You have to get out of that box of, I don't want to do this. Yes, you can do this. Even if you don't feel like you want to, get outside of that box. Change your way of thinking, okay? Because this is all about communication. As much as it is about being independent and working independently, you still need to be able to communicate with the provider. And that is going to be another episode I'm going to be doing. But I got to work on it. Because somebody did bring up the point of, isn't it dangerous when a provider doesn't hear anything from their coder and they think that everything is going swimmingly and fine? Yes, it is very dangerous, especially if that coder keeps having to drop the level on the provider and the provider's thinking that they're getting all this credit one way and then the coding is showing a different way. This is why you need to communicate with your providers, okay? But you got to do it correctly, okay? You can't be one of those ones that just goes in there and says, I'm going to teach them a lesson, because as I said in the other video, they don't need to learn lessons from you. They need to be a partner with you. That I will reiterate every single time. You need to be a partner for your provider, because that's the only way it's going to be mutually beneficial. It's going to be beneficial for the provider. It's going to be beneficial for you, because you're going to be able to get to that through that documentation much more efficiently, because they're doing what they're supposed to do. The facility is getting their money, the provider is getting his or her money, and you are able to get all the correct statistics and all the correct information by code selection in the system. Okay, so next one. What is the accuracy that you are required to maintain? Okay, that goes back to the audits. Okay, for me at my facility, it's 97%. So it's very high. I've seen overall accuracy go from some facilities it's 90% and all the way up to 97%. Okay, so again, it's going to depend on how many records is being pulled and what is the auditor seeing. Is the auditor telling you why you made a mistake? And if you're making a mistake, are you actively trying to correct yourself and change your way of coding to make sure that you are more accurate? Okay. All right, next one is, what is the quota? A lot of people ask, what is the quota? It is different for different settings, different facilities. Everybody has a different quota. I've worked in places where the quota was 22 an hour, and you're literally not coming up for air because you're trying so hard to hurry up. And because I'm in a specialty clinic now, my quota per hour is average of 12 per hour, which is good, because sometimes it's hard to even get that. But it is a average. So even if I did not make quota in a day, because the total quota for the day is 90, which averages out to 12 per hour. And the time for lunch and breaks is taken out of that time. So that's why it's like that. But if you have some days where you're only able to do 80, and I've had those days where I'm only able to do 65 because I had to go back and forth with the provider, or the provider needed attention, or there was something that was going on with the record that it was so much information that it did take me extra time. On those days, I have to make sure I make a note about what happened, or talk to my supervisor and say, hey, this happened. And then you have to make sure that on the subsequent days that you are trying to do a little bit more than you're supposed to do. There are some days when I can do, like I said, 65, and then there are days that I do 150. It depends. 175 I've done. But it depends on what I'm coding. If I'm coding something that's straightforward and easy, quick. If I have a problem provider who is giving me chest pain and making my eye twitch, it takes me a little bit longer, but I would rather take a little bit more time and do it correctly. My overall percentage of whether or not I miss or hit whether or not I hit the quota, it always exceeds. I always exceed the standard when it comes to my production. I think my average production now is 144 average. Because I mean, even though I'm supposed to do 90, it's at 144 average per day. Okay. But like I said, there's days when I am working and I can get a lot done. And then there are days when I can't really get a lot done because I'm either in meetings or I have a lot of people coming in and out. And it just finds its way of balancing itself out. So, all right. And the last one, before I wrap it up, before the phone turns off on me, is there a tobacco policy? Now, for my smokers out there, this is an issue because a lot of facilities, a lot of hospitals, a lot of medical like departments and companies, they're going for a smoke-free environment. You know, these companies have to pay for insurance, and I'm thinking that that's probably one of the reasons why they are very particular about tobacco use and making their facilities tobacco-free. I work in a tobacco-free facility. It is very difficult for the smokers because they do have a certain area that they can go, but the campus itself is tobacco-free. And I know of a hospital that if you apply with them and they will test you for tobacco use, and if you test positive, they will not hire you. And I'm just thinking it's more of a thing of being health conscious and maybe insurance premiums. That's the only thing I could think of. But if you are wanting to get into the medical field and you are a smoker, that is something to consider and think about. Not all facilities are going to allow you to have tobacco products on you either. Okay. So that is something to think about. I don't want to discourage anybody. Please don't think that. I'm really not trying to discourage anyone. But I just want to let you know what the real is out there and what is actually happening. And that is a point to bring up because there are a lot of people who do smoke, but this can be an issue when you're trying to get a job. Okay. So I hope this video has helped you. If it did, please give it a thumbs up. This stuff is really important, like subscribing and giving thumbs up, because it does really help me. So I would really appreciate it. And it's like getting to the top of the roller coaster because I am 10 away from 2,000 subscribers. Now, I know this is not a huge deal, but it's just like, I am so close to 2,000. And that may not seem like a lot to some people because I know there's people who have thousands of subscribers, but this is new to me, okay? So I'm very excited and I'm very happy and thankful so much for all of my subscribers and everybody new to subscribe. I truly, truly do appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up, but I will be back later on tonight. Like I said, about 7 o'clock, I will be doing Q&A Tuesday episode. So if you have any questions, you have from now until then to submit them. So I will see y'all in a little bit. Bye!